visual.
Welcome to Disruptor Confessions, where we uncover the stories of people reshaping the world around them. Today, I'm super thrilled to welcome Lion El Aton. He's the founder of Film Crux, a futurist. He's an AI innovator, a filmmaker, a Renaissance man in the making for sure. Lion sits at the edge of exploring the intersection of creativity, technology, and disruption, building some of the earliest social-first AI-driven shows. He's pushing the boundaries of what's really possible in AI filmmaking, music, and media. I would just say, if you think AI film is all hype, you need to meet this guy. He's turning it into results. Lion El Aton, welcome to Disruptor Confessions.
Thank you so much, John. That's such a kind intro. I really appreciate it. Make me seem much cooler than I actually am.
I stumbled across some of your work in the last couple of months, and there's a lot of AI filmmaking going on. Literally, Lion, a couple of years ago, we were seeing DALL-E, and everybody's kind of laughing at how rudimentary, basic DALL-E and kind of these still images were. And here we are just a few years later, and people are producing just unbelievable work. And some of the work I saw coming from you kind of blew my mind. I started looking up, who are you and what do you do? And that brought me to Film Crux. So I want to ask you, Lion, let's start there. What is Film Crux?
So Film Crux is a company I started after I had established myself from learning filmmaking, learning all the basics. And I wanted to create something that sort of served as a bridge between independent filmmakers in Hollywood to close that gap so that people's only limitation was creativity and imagination. So as a natural byproduct of that, when AI came onto the scene, it made perfect sense that this one thing is probably going to do that more than any other invention ever in history. So that's why we got into AI so early. And Film Crux, I started off by giving away assets for people for free. I tried to create stuff that people were selling at the time or maybe didn't exist, things like LUTs, transitions, etc. And we would just give them away for free, make them as good as we could. And I wanted to create the thing I needed when I was doing filmmaking, whether I was just starting or at the place I was then. You know, you all need help and assets and you want to learn stuff. So I was just like, let me make the thing I would be in love with if it existed. Let me make the thing I need as like a filmmaker and a creative. And that's what I established Film Crux to be.
It's so interesting you bring that up because you just reminded me. I remember looking at some of your articles, your posts and content. You're actually gifting out your secret sauce, your insight, how you go about creating content, leveraging which tools you use. I was fascinated by that because I think this kind of giving nature comes back to you. So that was really powerful. It actually brought me to one of the earlier films that I saw that I've seen posted several times in several different online sites, and that is Javelin. How did you make it?
Continue with the mission, Javelin 1. You are clear to engage. I repeat, clear to engage.
Roger. Javelin 1 moving to engage the primary target.
I appreciate it. Honestly, Javelin, a lot of the reason it has so many views is not because it's like an amazing short film or anything. It's more because I think it served as like an inflection point to show people that, wait, you're going to actually be able to use AI to make real movies. And it's still very early. I always kind of compare it to, we're in a pre-Toy Story era. If you can think of Toy Story as that inflection point where 3D animation really became a thing and everyone realized unanimously, like, okay, you can make great films with 3D animation. We're still pretty far before that point. And so these are sort of like early Pixar tests, even when they were at Lucasfilm, early tests showing people, look, this is going in a direction where it's going to change everything, where you're going to have whole new forms of filmmaking, whole new mediums, whole new ways to do VFX and animation. And I think Javelin just shows people a more clear idea of where this is all headed. You can watch that and say like, oh, this is kind of like a proof of concept for a real film. And if this was created by one person with no budget in a week, imagine what could be done, you know, in months or a year. Imagine what could be done with a budget. Imagine what could be done with the team.
When did you create that?
I think at this point, it feels forever ago in AI time. It feels like it was years ago, but I think it was like a month or two ago at the very most. So it's not that old.
I ask, and we'll get into it. We don't have to do it right now, but I want to talk about Sora too, which just, as we're recording this, that just launched. I kind of want to pivot from Javelin. What was the tools that you used for Javelin?
So the main tool I used was Hailuo. So that was a brand partnership with Hailuo. At Film Crux, we were super early in the AI stuff. So naturally, we just started telling everyone about it, getting people excited about it before there were even any AI video generators, when there was just image. And we were making short films when there were only image generators. So now a lot of the biggest brands, they'll come to Film Crux and they'll ask us to showcase their tools. So we used Hailuo for that. I also used Midjourney and I used 11 Labs. And everything else, I just created myself. So I'll use sound design libraries. I've collected our own sound design libraries. We use just editing software, Premiere Pro. So normal filmmaking tools, but the AI tools are Hailuo, Midjourney, and 11 Labs.
So this speaks to, before I jump to the next question, I'll kind of like poke at that a little bit. So I'm old school. I came out of the days when print publishing was a big thing and I saw desktop publishing changing that. I was beta testing Photoshop when no one knew what it was, this photo editing tool. And then going all the way through like Adobe After Effects and then, Premiere and Final Cut Pro and some of the digital tools that we've seen. It's changing at like just ridiculous pace. A lot of people are producing pretty cool stuff, but there's something different about your work. And I think it dawned on me is you have a sense of timing, craft, technology, music. What's your background? How did you pull those skills together to not just know the tools? You mentioned just a couple tools right there, but also like you're bringing them together with sound design and creativity. And talk a little bit about how you got here.
Well, ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with making stuff and like doing art. So I started drawing when I was really young, second, third grade. And then I started playing music. I played the trumpet when I was in fourth grade. So I got pretty advanced with that and reading music and playing music. And then I went to performing arts schools. So I was in every kind of band you can imagine, orchestras, jazz band, everything. Played a bunch of different other instruments. And then around 11th grade, I started learning singing and rapping. And then when I got early adult, I started producing music. So I started learning music production and learning all those tools. And then it just kept growing. And then I started with filmmaking and it sort of never stopped. Like I'm just infinitely curious, like a little kid where everything you see seems cool and you want to know how to do it. You want to know what you can make from it. And if you're curious, it's kind of a superpower because you just naturally learn all these things. I call them blocks or Lego blocks. And you can imagine if you're going to build something, if I say, can you build a pirate ship? If you have 3 Lego blocks, you can build a pirate ship, sort of, but you're extremely limited in what you can build. But if you have all these blocks from all these different experiences, all these things you can learn, well, if you have 100 blocks, you could build a much better pirate ship. If you have 1,000, you could build something you could never build with 100. And the more of those blocks you have, the more things you're able to build. That's why being a polymath and sort of being like a Renaissance man or woman is really kind of like the secret to the next decade or two, because you're going to be able to take all these disparate ideas and all these new tools and then synthesize them into something new and different. And the people who are going to be the best at that are going to be the people who really have an unfair advantage moving into a relatively unknown future.
Absolutely love it. I feel like we're kindred spirits. I have that same kind of path of blessing and a curse, right, Lion? It's like you're constantly curious. So you kind of want to light all these fires because you're so excited about the next opportunity. You said something too about like this unfair advantage. What do you mean?
So if you think about Leonardo da Vinci, right? He lived in really the first Renaissance, but I think a new Renaissance could be on the way. I want to make it happen. But if you think about how Leonardo's mind worked, he was super obsessed with nature, but also mechanics and also painting and also music. He loved everything. And all those insights you get from being in all these different fields and having all these different interests give you perspective that you can take ideas from one field that seems disconnected over here and combine them. It doesn't seem like art would connect with mechanics, but it helps you invent. It wouldn't seem like nature would help you with art, but it helps you create three-dimensionality or learn anatomy. And everything's really connected. And all we're doing is discovering where those connections are. So if you're doing something, even if it seems unrelated to anything, it is connected to everything. And if you find those connections or create those new connections, you get these unbelievable advantages because you might not think, like very, very early, there were people like Caleb Ward who were taking Midjourney and then creating these Wes Anderson style shots. And he created really a short little clip that was one of the first AI short films. And it was the Wes Anderson short film. And it blew everyone's mind. It became super viral. It became a huge trend. It kind of was the predecessor to launching his company, Curious Refuge. And he just combined, he was at no film school before that. He combined his love for film and creating and technology into a new thing and started pioneering really a new sort of version of a medium of short content. And that evolved into what AI filmmaking is starting to become now. But you can only see those things often if you have enough interest. If you don't have enough interest, it's like James Patterson always says, great writers live amazing lives. If you don't do a lot in your life, then it's hard to draw from a variety of experiences. And it goes back to that block theory. You really want to have as many blocks as you can, because then when you set out to build something, you just have such an advantage over someone who has far less blocks. And I really think about everything that way. Curious people, even the most intelligent or successful people in their field, like Einstein, he said his greatest power was curiosity. It's the greatest power for Walt Disney, for Leonardo da Vinci, for Steve Jobs. They're all in wildly different fields, but they all have that one thing in common. It's going to make you learn more. It's going to make you figure things out at a rate other people can't. And it's going to make you less pessimistic. Tim Ferriss talks about this idea of you want to be sort of optimistically skeptical, not pessimistically skeptical. So instead of saying, you shouldn't do that, or that doesn't work, or I can't do that, think of like, can I do this? Asking the question with an optimistic tint is like, can this work? Can you make a film with AI? Instead of assuming that you just can't do these things, how about you take no assumption that it's impossible and then try it? And then if you can't do it, that doesn't even mean it's impossible. It just means, maybe try again.
I love your train of thought there. I really do. And I can tell it's a thread of who you are. It's in your DNA. So I just really appreciate you being kind of transparent about it. I want to pivot into some specific tools that I believe you're very familiar with. You've mentioned a few already. That curiosity has taken you into trying things like Runway, correct? So one, who is Runway? And what is the Runway? I think it's the Gen 48.
So Runway, I think they're kind of the leader in the AI space as far as tools. They have the best total workstation for AI video and AI creation in general. There are a lot of things that are aggregators or a lot of tools who are really good at one thing. Runway sort of has it all. There are other AI tools that are specifically good in certain areas, like VO3 is incredible for a set of things. Hailuo is incredible for certain things. Of course, Sora is now incredible for certain things. And those change all the time. Runway, I see sort of as like a clear winner where they're going to be one of the dominant forces in AI video moving forward. There will be other ones, but they're just on a really great track. It sort of reminds me of Squarespace. If you think of Squarespace in the website builder industry, you
early and really good and really on top of it and kind of like a step ahead, right?
Exactly. A lot of vertical integration. So even if they're not necessarily the first one to any new technology, they integrate it really great in a total workspace. And
it's so funny to me, like Runway, I just learned of them here recently, but now once you learn of something, it seems like they're everywhere, right? So,
yeah.
So I want to ask you about them because what's the Gen 48 challenge? Is that what it was called? What's the Gen 48 challenge?
So that challenge is basically a challenge to create an AI short film with specific guidelines in a 48-hour timeline. So it's either one filmmaker or a small team of filmmakers, and you have to concept, do pre-production, production, and post-production, and create an entire AI short film from beginning to end in a 48-hour time frame and submit it to their competition. So this competition, they do it maybe a couple times a year. They also have some bigger short film competitions, but Gen 48's sort of become like the premier AI filming competition for people who want to test the limits of new things, experiment with tools, try new storytelling methods. So there's a lot of great people who came from the Gen 48 contest. So that's a good place to go if you want to get some inspiration.
Have you entered?
I did. I entered with a film called Anyone that I just did for fun. And it ended up being a finalist.
I'm trapped, but not the way you are. I'm trapped in location, but you're trapped in time. You can go anywhere. I can go any when. I've seen empires rise and fall. Countless beings live and die. I've seen man go from rummaging in the dirt to flying among the stars. But I cannot leave the bubble around this broken, infernal time machine.
The more important thing was I was blown away by other people's entries. There was so much new stuff being done, so much interesting stuff being done, really wild takes. And it's hard because this is just in 48 hours. Most of this stuff would be literally impossible in 48 hours without AI. You're just getting work that just has unbelievable effects and visuals and other worlds and, alien creatures and crazy timelines, just things you couldn't possibly do in 48 hours. So it opens up sort of the breadth of possibilities in such a short time frame and from such small teams with low to no budget.
Is there a film called Mandela that you worked on?
Yeah, so Mandela was a really, really, really early AI short film that I created. It's a concept for a trailer where, someone in the future, in an alternate future, finds a device that is able to slowly shift the timeline, but no one remembers what the previous timeline was. You just remember glimpses of it. And it's about a group who's trying to stop them from changing to the future into something they want that might not be in the best interest of everyone else. So it's like a sci-fi action film. And I created that also as an experiment pretty early on.
This inflection point that you mentioned earlier, could you put a date on it? Was it after ChatGPT launched?
There's a series of these inflection points. The first one was actually pretty gradual, and it was, for at least in the AI filmmaking world, was Midjourney. So Midjourney is one of the ones that it came out, but only people who are really paying attention started to see it. And it was kind of Caleb Ward's sort of, I don't know, like his Wes Anderson short film that kind of blew up to people like, oh, wow, you can make this stuff. And then later you started to see things like the Studio Ghibli trends and things like that. And then the biggest for AI is for sure the release of ChatGPT. When ChatGPT came out, it's the fastest growing product of all time, fastest growing app of all time, fastest amount of users of all time.
We're in October. It's not even 3 years ago. I think it was November 30th, if I recall, end of November 3 years ago. It's not even quite 3 years.
Exactly.
And look at where we've been. So that brings me to the next question, Lion. I want to pin you down on what you want to call yourself, because you are a futurist, you're an AI filmmaker, you're a musician, you're a businessman. You've got a lot on your plate. Is AI fundamentally changing how the filmmakers think about their work? And I guess I know that it is, but there's traditional filmmakers still out there. What does the next 2 years of filmmaking look like?
I think for a lot of traditional filmmakers, because I'm a traditional filmmaker as well, I'm just also adopting these tools. I think it's just like going to be the same thing as digital or CGI. You have these innovative filmmakers who are usually like down at the ground level, people like who are early Pixar or the James Cameron types who are inventing or adopting technology super early and making incredible things. And most of the time, people can only tell how genius that is in retrospect, right? People are very hesitant to these tools and to anything new, really, in a lot of cases, except for those innovators and early adopters. But then what ends up happening is that it slowly starts trickling down to everyone else, where everyone else starts slowly adopting and they're like, okay, I didn't like CGI, but maybe I'll just use it for this. Maybe I'll just use it to augment backgrounds or for hidden VFX. And then next thing you know, it gets better and better until eventually you get movies like Dune, where it would be impossible to make a movie like that without CGI at that quality, but no one even really comments on it unless you're a filmmaker. It just blows your mind. That's kind of the path AI is going on. It's going to be...
You're describing like the Gartner hype cycle, right? You're describing a hype cycle where there's early adopters, there's laggers, and everything in between. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly what's happening. That's what happens with every technology.
Have we even started to swing the bat?
Yeah, my business partner, Eddie Yoon, he kind of talks about it in the context of the game hasn't even started yet. Like we're before the first inning. The baby hasn't even been born.
We're learning how to play the game, but we haven't really started the game.
Exactly. We're so early and the game is about to start. we're pre-Toy Story, right? So pretty soon, it might be next year, it might be the year after. I think definitely no longer than that. You're going to get the first sort of Toy Story with AI, where you're going to get a mostly AI or totally AI project or very big AI hybrid project that blows people away almost universally. And that's going to sort of shift the popularity of the idea from being something that most artists are against, maybe even most individual people are skeptical of, to what the possibilities actually are, and that this is going to be a thing that's going to be in every aspect of filmmaking, across the board. The only exceptions will be just like there are still people who shoot on film to this day. You'll have people who are sort of purists who like doing things in a very old school way. That will still exist. And now there will be a demand for that for sure. You'll just also have this new thing that's taking over and dominating, much like 3D animation did for animation in general.
Well, it's interesting you use animation, right? So years ago, there was like sketch cell by cell, paint cell by cell, and it evolved. And this is just another evolution. I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but like the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution seem big and life-changing. And I think history tells us that. People point to those two big moments in historical times. Those were big. Everything seems pretty iterative in the last century. We had some big ones with personal computers and colored television and, certainly the internet. Those are all big. Mobile, social media. This feels different, Lion. I have to say, AI and just broadly AI and Gen AI and agentic AI and AI filmmaking is part of all of that. Feels more agricultural revolution scale or industrial revolution scale. This does not feel like an iterative nature that we've seen around the technology the last 20, 30, 50, 70 years. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I always think of iteration and innovation as two different things, where iteration is taking something that exists and improving upon it, and innovation is creating something that doesn't exist. It's not just an improvement of an existing thing. And we're entering like a hyper innovation cycle. So it's almost like you had those ages, and then you had the information age with personal computing. This is really like the intelligence age, where you're going to get things outside of humans that are smart and aren't just smart, but are as smart as humans, and aren't just as smart as humans, but are smarter than any human, and not just smarter than any human, but smarter than every human. And if that happens, where you start getting this intelligence outside of ourselves that's smarter than every human combined, it's not going to feel iterative. It's going to be such dramatic and drastic change that it's going to make our lives so much better, but there's also so much we're wildly unprepared for. And my whole thought is the tidal wave is coming, and you could either get crushed by it or learn to surf. So I'm really trying to do my best to teach as many people to learn to surf as possible. Surfing's fun.
I'm right in line there with you. I think people that talk about AI is overhyped, people talk about it's way underhyped. I kind of lean towards it's underhyped. I think some days I'm a little bit nervous about it, super excited about it. A lot of people listening, especially people who are trying to get into that creative AI space, broadly speaking, they're looking to figure out like how to get into it. Where do I go? What advice do you have for creators, especially around businesses trying to surf that AI wave you mentioned, instead of just getting crushed by it?
Definitely. I think the best thing to do is start getting those blocks. Start experimenting with everything, and then you'll naturally start making the connections that apply to your particular situation. So if you're, let's say, a writer and you write books, novels, keep doing everything you're doing. And then instead figure out ways that AI can handle more of the stuff that you aren't the best at or that you don't like doing. Now you can start making teasers or trailers or proof of concepts or little shorts for your book series that you never would have made before. Now you can make content around your book to help build out the universe and get a fan base and create content and get people interested in it and monetize in a way that maybe you couldn't do before. So depending on what your situation is, if you start experimenting, you'll easily be able to start seeing how this can connect with what you yourself is doing. For big brands and companies, they really need to keep in mind the eliminate, automate, delegate, the right sort of framework. It's not my framework, but that concept really does well, because you could say, okay, what are things we're doing that we don't need to be doing? And just stop doing those, just eliminate them. And then what are things that we can automate? Well, we're now getting the greatest automation tools of all time. You know what I'm saying? So you can automate things in ways that were impossible before with agentic AI, and then delegate, where let's say you're a brand, you maybe couldn't afford big commercials and Super Bowl ads, but now you can find a brilliant AI filmmaker or creative, and you can hire them to do projects that can be on that level of virality or quality around whatever your brand is in a way that is totally scalable. So now you can compete with brands that are much bigger than you, or you can compete at a scale if you're a big brand that just wasn't possible before. So there's so many advantages. You just gotta experiment enough and find the people who are doing the thing already. Find all the pioneers in the industry, go follow them, read all their stuff, join communities that they're in. You can do as little or as much as you want, but try to do something every day where you just experiment. Sort of like what you were saying about Sora. Sora is a perfect thing. You don't know how to get into AI? Try to get an invite code to Sora, download it, and start playing with it, and you'll quickly see how it can help you.
So we called this podcast Disruptor Confessions for a reason. The disruption is real. It seems like the pace of change is faster than human beings can really keep up with. I actually find that I don't wait for like a 3-month or 3-year report. It's too old. I really need to look at real-time feeds daily to understand what the new release is, what the new technology is, what the new capabilities are. And I'm also reading a lot of 1- and 2-person billion-dollar companies being created. Well, can you talk a little bit about that? This disruption, and maybe I've mentioned this to you when we first chatted, but I've seen disruption kind of in 3 different areas. One, you're either disrupting something, you're being disrupted by it, or you're observing disruption happening. I think you are kind of a little bit of more of the disruptor side. You're leaning into that curiosity side. Would you agree with that?
As a business person, you always want to be on that side. You don't want to be on the side that's observing, because that means someone's passing you by. You don't want to be on the side that's getting disrupted, because that means you're Blockbuster, right? You don't want that. So you always want to be on the disrupting side from a business perspective. And if you're just a normal person, there's nothing wrong with observing disruption that's happening, especially as it doesn't, pertain to you as directly as like if you're doing a business that it's affecting, but it does matter for you. So you want to get as involved in the things that are doing the disruption as possible, because disruption isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you have bad habits, it sort of has negative connotations, like you disrupted it. But if you have bad habits, for instance, if you disrupt your past bad habits, you can create good habits. If you have bad ways of doing things, disruption can create better ways of doing things. So if people think of disruption as neutral, and it can be either good or bad depending on how you use it, you should always be trying to disrupt things in a good way. Stop the status quo and make things much better in every way you can for yourself and the world around you.
100%. I'm spot on with aligned with that. Hey, listen, one of the things I think you're pioneering right now is more AI-driven social shows. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really big on social shows, especially AI ones.
First of all, maybe define or describe what that means. What is an AI-driven or an AI social show? And then is this AI-created social content reshaping storytelling? Is it changing audience engagement? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so an AI social show, or a social show in general, is just a show like a series, like a TV series, but designed for social media. So it'd be vertical formats, and they'd be short episodes, typically between 1 to 3 minutes. They can be longer, but on Instagram, they're not going to push out anything yet that's longer than 3 minutes, but they will get longer. So it may actually do better for increasing our already short attention spans from people overusing social media by creating more involvement and investment in characters and story and these worlds that are being built that you're following with a single narrative from episode to episode. So it may have a sort of non-intuitive effect on people's attention span where they may get more invested, and you can use social shows to get people to watch longer form content. I kind of compare it to podcasts now. Most people learn about podcasts from seeing a clip on social media. But then if you see 1 or 2 or something you really like, you'll go check out the podcast and listen to it or watch it in a longer format. So it's a perfect way of getting audiences who aren't sure that they should be listening to you or watching you a taste, so they can sort of dip their toes in the water and then jump into the pool with some longer form content. So I think that's going to be huge for brands. It's going to be great for filmmakers who want to get into Hollywood or get their movie or their series picked up, you can now just make a show on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or wherever you want. And that show can be a series that you continue with a single narrative from episode to episode that draws fans deeper and deeper. People are too concerned with this sort of breadth or this wideness of attention, but the depth of your relationship with the audience matters way more. And social shows are a perfect way to do that. Something similar is microdramas. Microdramas are really just sort of the brother or sister version of social shows. They haven't really taken off in America yet, but in China already, they've exceeded the cinema box office in China with $8 billion just last year, which is more than the entire Chinese box office. That's going to come here. We're not even at 1% of what they're going to grow into. And that's just one part of it. Social shows have all the platform. Every person's already on social media.
Well, and you're seeing that trend of traditional media, like linear television watching versus streaming and now short form. People are just comfortable with that. It's certainly the trend we've seen over the last many years. I liken it to, I happen to work for the film industry for a while when it went from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray to streaming. It just changed formats and structures of how people consume content. And prior to that, I was in the music industry where I saw traditional records being made with big record labels, and then MP3 file compression came out, file sharing around music, peer-to-peer music sharing. You saw artists being developed kind of in their garage, in their basement, launching a song on YouTube and blowing up. And we could go through a list of people that have made it big by doing that without needing that kind of old school of traditional going through a studio and then having like kind of the distribution models of the past. So is this kind of the social show where you're focusing on, and are you producing one now?
Yeah, so I'm producing one right now. It's called Liminal. It's a cyberpunk anima, which is sort of a anime-inspired animation. It's designed purely for Instagram. It's on other social media as well.
We ID'd the perp who died during the museum job.
Do we have a photo? Sending it now. That's impossible. It's the same guy from the Union State job.
Are you sure? I thought he was found dead on arrival.
He was. I was the one who found him.
Twins?
No, it's much weirder than that. At first
It's really taking advantage of these new formats and new ways to get audiences interested in this world that you can then, create a deeper relationship and ongoing stories. So you can actually make much better content than most of the existing one-off content on social media. And you can create sort of a fan base that wants to see a continuing story or series. People love watching shows because of the total amount of investment you can put in it. If you spend a lot of time with someone, even someone fictional, you feel like you know them. And that's great for brands. That's great for storytelling. It opens up all kinds of opportunities for new filmmakers and new creators and businesses. And really the possibilities are endless. You're going to start, most people can't name a social show now. Some people can, but by this time next year, I think everyone's going to know at least one. And you're going to see one every time you open an app.
When you talk about that, I can't help but think of like, how is the audience going to be managed? Because in traditional media, people are finding their audience and they're kind of not managing them, but they understand who they are. But social is kind of this flying through. Do you have a sense of like audience capture demographic you're looking at? Do you have a sense of how that works?
Yeah, it's actually extremely advantageous from an audience perspective because you've noticed a lot with movies lately. You can even have an amazing movie. It could come out in theaters and it could bomb in theaters. That really is not going to happen much with social shows because you build the audience as you go. The initial investment is much, much lower. The risk is much lower. You start building the audience. As you get the audience, you can get more resources. You can get more investment on your end and from everyone. And then the audience can kind of grow as the show grows. So you don't have to worry about launching someone and no one seeing it or you not getting a return on investment. You're actually guaranteed, if you have a huge popular social show, the next episode, everyone's going to watch, right? And as long as you keep making something great, people want to watch, you don't have to do too much audience management because you're not hoping people are going to show up opening day in a theater. And I think it's going to be the way that Hollywood's going to start testing projects for TV, for streaming services, and for films that release in theaters. You can start a social show for a movie that's coming out months or even a year in advance, build up the following before you even greenlight it. In fact, once it's hitting and viral and people like it and you can tell that you have an audience, you can take care of that audience by keep delivering great stuff for them well before your big launch of your movie. Then your movie launches, the audience is already there. They're going to go, the movie's going to do well because you're not releasing it to crickets. And then you can continue building for that audience after. I think that's going to be a huge change just for the studios who learn it. I think that's such an early concept that no studios are doing that yet. But when they find out about this and when they start realizing how to do it and why to do it and the crazy advantages you get from doing it, I think they're going to go crazy with that. And it's just going to be better for everyone, for the viewer and for the studios, for the artists, everybody.
Are you getting into advertising at all with your work, like AI filmmaking for ads, AI commercials?
Yeah, I do brand ads all the time with AI. I don't think the average person or even the average filmmaker realizes how big the demand is. The demand is huge. This is currently the biggest supply-demand discrepancy in the entire world, which is AI creatives and brands looking to hire AI creatives to make stuff. Because before, there were just so many things that would have been impossible for a brand to create without millions of dollars or huge teams, all the structure. But now you're much less limited by your resources. So you could find one great AI creator and create something brilliant. And you can have a bunch of different AI creators working on projects. Or you could just hire AI creatives to work inside your company, and they can revolutionize your company from an ads perspective or from an organic content perspective. So this is the biggest supply-demand discrepancy. The people who are paying attention are going to win big from that.
Are the big film industry companies, the large ones that we all know, are they taking note? Are they worried? Are they already embracing it? Are they already adopting AI as you see it? Or do you think they're all a little bit nervous right now?
I think they don't know what to do, but I don't think they're necessarily nervous. I think it's getting to the point where it's obvious that AI is going to change the game for everything. And usually the big companies, they see opportunities of how they can really win from that. And the companies that are doing the best now, they've already been adopting new technology. Like Disney's been adopting new technology since the founding of Disney, right? They're not going to wait or take it easy. They want to figure out what to do. The smart ones are going all in on it. The ones who are a little more nervous, it's really more about not knowing what to do with it rather than being against it per se. And the movie studios are going to have a huge advantage from this. But what I tell people is if the studios can do way more with less using these tools, that means individuals can also do way more with less using these tools. So if you're an individual creator, the benefits you gain are actually way bigger than the studios, because now you can start competing on the studio's level. The studios, they're just competing on the level they've always been on, and now they can just find more efficient ways to do it, more original content. But if you're an original creator, you have all the advantages in the world. You don't have to wait for gatekeepers. You don't have to wait for green lights. You can just start making something that was impossible just 5 years ago, get a huge audience, get attention, and then grow it into something bigger and bigger.
Lion, I would be remiss if I didn't get into some of the harder questions with you. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
I want to ask you about ethics, cultural implications, job loss, the shifting power dynamics we're talking about right now in media and the big studios. Let me start with this. One of the things that I want to ask you about is less about the ethics and kind of that side of it. It's more about just the sameness of AI filmmaking. The AI kind of starts to all, not just films, just imagery and creative content, starts to all have an AI look to it. Do you have a sense, do you think there's risk in everything taking on the sameness of AI and having a conformity?
No, I think there's no risk of that. Because if you think about photography, there used to not be that many photographers in the world. At one time, there were under 100,000, and there were under 10,000. Then there were under 1,000. At one time, there was only one photographer, right? So I think the problem of sameness comes from not having a high capitalization rate of people who can make something with the tools. If only a handful of people are able to make films, you're going to get a lot less films, a lot less originality, no matter how great those filmmakers are, because there's only so few of them. The more people who are able to make films, or the more people who are able to take photos, the wider variety of photos you're able to get, right? Things don't really benefit from being non-democratized, right? If you want to see a lot of great work, give the tools to everyone, give them the best tools, and then sit back and watch what happens. And if you've, done anything sort of in the space, like if you do any research, you are going to see all manner of different films. And the people who complain about the sameness of AI, they usually have not seen very many things, right? Because I've seen stuff that blows my mind, and we're still in the early days. And it's sort of like 3D animation. Once things start to get too similar, where Pixar was so dominant that a lot of the other studios and DreamWorks, Illumination, and even Disney's 3D studio, they started focusing on that similar style of 3D animation, and people were kind of like getting stale with it a little bit. And so what happened is you started getting films like Mitchell's versus Machines, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, or Arcane, that had these wildly different styles that still took advantage of 3D animation, but were sort of in opposition to what was the norm, because that was interesting to people and that got people's attention naturally. So our attention will always look for novelty. And as long as that's the case, there will be people who always want to make that novelty. So if there's not a problem.
Yeah, no, I love that take on it. I think there's something to that, but I think you're thinking across how do different creatives come at it? What kind of sensibilities do they bring to their work? And I think you're onto something in that it will evolve and grow just like other creative media has in the past. I want to flip the switch a little bit. And this is something that's just not just in the AI and creative space, but just to AI in general, this notion of job loss. And I kind of want to poke at it a little bit more, because I don't want to just leave our listeners and viewers to just go, well, there's going to be more creative jobs developed. They're just going to be different. I want to kind of go deeper than that. I'm more interested just AI filmmaking, AI music making, AI creative, disrupting all of the past kind of work. These experts and these professionals have been doing all of this work. There's lighting and there's grips and there's all of the support staff. Is that gone? Should they all be worried about their jobs?
I think being worried doesn't help. I think being curious is the thing that helps. So if you're in a position, you're like a grip, then I doubt you're a grip because you were just, as a kid, you're like, I want to grow up and be a grip. You probably just are doing a job, and you may love films, but you're missing the point that you now have tools where you don't have to be a grip anymore. You can make your own project or learn to make your own project and then monetize that. You can't do the same thing the same way and expect to get paid for it. If you want to get paid for something, you have to do something that the market actually values. Why don't you try to figure out something that you uniquely are good at and you have sort of a monopoly on, and then monetizing that thing? Create your own projects. And don't worry so much about this idea of jobs, because jobs are going away. I try to tell people that jobs are not the point. Jobs are an antiquated idea. The point is to use AI and automation to create such a world of abundance that the entire antiquated idea of having to work to earn a living becomes obsolete.
This gets into that universal basic income. We're going to have something in the future, whether it's 20 years or 50 years or 2 years. Can I ask you about that? So you just simply say, well, jobs are going to go away. It's just the reality.
It's just the reality. Yeah, we need UBI. We need universal basic income because there's no real alternative.
In the creative space, let's stay with AI filmmaking. I mean, that's pretty near and dear. You know the space, you follow the trends, you're seeing the new tools, you're building and creating with them. How fast are these jobs going to go away in the AI filmmaking space taking over?
Way faster than people think. Sam Altman and the head of Anthropic, so the heads of Anthropic and OpenAI, literally had to go on sort of a tour and go around and talk to the government and Congress and warn everyone that these AI tools are going to absolutely decimate jobs. And it's not because there's not going to be stuff for us to do. There's going to be infinite things for us to do. The problem is people shifting from what they're used to doing new things. The people who are very good at making those transitions, people who are very adaptable, they're going to absolutely thrive. But not everyone's like that. So what we have to do is we have to create some systems in governance that can help the people who are not that adaptive, so that they're not just like suffering or like homeless or not having any income in that transition period to where people can start doing whatever they want to do. Because it's not going to be overnight transition, even though the the disruption will happen very, very quickly.
So Lion, are we thinking, let's stay with AI filmmaking and the film industry and videos and TV commercials and traditional ways of making video. Is it 2 years? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? Where do you see that horizon starting to shift where everybody's producing all video content with AI? How quick is this happening?
In 5 years, I think every film, for the most part, with some exceptions, will use AI in some form or another. But the cool thing is it's totally optional. It's sort of like if you're a filmmaker and you want to use all practical effects, you can do that. Most big films that come out in theaters use visual effects, even the ones that are very heavy on practical shooting, like Top Gun Maverick. They're filming as much as humanly possible, but there's still a ton of VFX in that movie. But it's great, and no one complains about it because the movie's great. AI is going to be something similar, where you're not even going to think about the fact that it's AI after a while. You're just going to see real filmmaking or animation or whatever it is, whether it's live action or animation or some other new style or medium, and you're just going to care about if the movie's good or not. Most audiences aren't going to care if it was 10% AI, 30%, 50%, 90%. They only care now because it's so novel. It's sort of like how we went from the first Pixar movies were mind-blowing because they were 3D animated. But after a while, they were mind-blowing just because they were great movies. Like Ratatouille, No one was thinking about the fact that it's 3D animated. They were thinking about how great a movie this is.
Great story, great movie, yeah.
Exactly.
Which I think is why I was attracted to some of your work. I think I mentioned at the top is that your ability to like bring music and sound design and video and storytelling all together, I think is why your work is so compelling. Can you just run through some of the tools and platforms that you rely on to blend kind of your creative work and AI? And how do you decide which tools to use versus what not to use?
There's really two paths I take. One is I'm just making something I want to make, and then I figure out what are the best tools at the moment to do that. And for that, I use a system called modular workflows that I came up with, which is essentially like a VFX pipeline or a workflow for any filmmaker or creator or VFX artist, where you use a series of tools to make the finished product. And modular workflows are a little bit different than traditional ones because they're specifically designed so that you can quickly swap in and out certain aspects of your workflow with new tools as they become better. So I might be in the middle of a project and a new lip sync tool comes out that just completely blows everything else out of the water. And I need to set up my workflow in a way so that I can replace my existing lip sync with this new tool without causing much disruption, right? So that's an instance of bad disruption would be making my workflow worse. But good disruption would, I'm technically changing it, but my workflow is just better, right? It doesn't get worse. And so there are tools for image generation. My favorite, I use Midjourney for every single project. I love Midjourney. I think it's great. They're also the best at anime, which is anime inspired stuff, which I think most people still don't know about for video. Incredible. So I use Midjourney for a lot of stuff. There are image editing tools now like Seedream and Nano Banana that allow you to edit your images with more refined,
It's blowing my mind what I'm seeing coming out of like some of these tools, like Nano Banana, blowing my mind.
It's incredible. One of the biggest complaints about AI was that you don't have control. But now these new tools from them and Runway, where you can actually edit every single thing in the image or the video is going to change everything.
Can I ask you a couple things about that? My curiosity there. So it wasn't long ago, it was all about like, we only have 8 seconds and we don't like just the duration and the compute to get a piece of video. But then there was also like this, and I'm not sure I'm saying the phrase right, but the character consistency across scenes. Is that being resolved? Is the duration and length of video being resolved? Talk a little bit about what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, so Sora 2, now that dropped, that's the biggest thing of the whole year for AI creatives. And
why is Sora 2? Why is Sora 2 so interesting?
The main reasons it's interesting is because it's a social media app, which you wouldn't think works, but it's unbelievably addictive because you're doing much more creating rather than just passive viewing. And I think that's just a great thing. If we can make more people creating things, it's much more interesting. You're more involved in the process and less passive. But the other thing is they have a Cameo feature where you basically will film a video with talking of yourself, of your face and your voice, and it'll use that to put you in any video you want to be in with character consistency, which is one of the biggest hurdles.
Thank you. That was the phrase I was looking for. Character consistency.
No, you said it
Because
perfect.
I saw some clips of Sam Altman, and it was all AI generated, but he looked like Sam Altman throughout the piece. You probably saw it as well. It was just released. So that character consistency has been a massive challenge up until recently.
Yes, and Sora really is changing the game with that. When Sora 2 Pro drops in the next few weeks, which it may even be out by the time this episode comes out, that's going to be a game changer as well, just because I think they're going to have additional features for pros, which are definitely going to focus very highly on character consistency, which was really one of the last great hurdles to get over. Now that there's character consistency, you can make films in any style with the same characters. There's going to be location consistency with that, where you can use the same locations, references for those sort of things. And then it's just going to be increasing fidelity, where fidelity gets better and better. And I think what will really blow people's minds is totally new ways of making things that never existed in traditional filmmaking and VFX, where you,
for example,
like world building. So instead of what you used to do is you used to like make a set and you'd film it, and make a digital set and you'd film it. Imagine making a AI virtual set and you film it, but you can change what the characters do and what's in the shot in real time without having to create new 3D models, without having to redesign things. You can change what characters do. Characters can even operate on their own. Imagine a scene where cars are driving by and people are walking and interacting totally on their own, and you can just be filming that and moving the camera and saying, actually have them stand over here. Actually, let's make it sunset, right? Actually, let's make it rain. Things that would have been very difficult to do with live action and very slow to do with VFX, you can now do with the click of a button, so you can create as fast as you can think.
Lion, will traditional filmmaking companies, will they survive?
Some of them, the smart ones, the ones who ask for help from people who really know the space. The ones that don't probably aren't going to. But the big ones, and the ones who have at least innovation or adoption as part of their history, ones like Disney. Disney's certainly not quite as innovative as they were in Walt's day, because he's a CVO. He was like a chief vision officer. He's the one who was the visionary leader. They don't quite have that right now, but they have so much innovation throughout their history, and they're so good at, buying the right companies and the right properties to adopt, and, they work with all the best VFX companies, and they have a long historicity of those things, that they're definitely going to survive. Disney will be fine. Some of the other studios are going to have problems.
Well, how many creatives will it take to develop an ad, develop a movie, develop content?
One, and then eventually zero. And I think that's disturbing to people, because we like to think that, okay, if something else can do something better than I can do, then what happens to me? But I tell people there's a robot that's designed to shoot basketballs into a hoop and make it every time. And it can do that. But no one pays to watch it play. We pay to watch humans play. There's something about humans that we like to see other humans doing things. I can't run as fast as a motorcycle can. No human can. But no one, no one's like confused why we would watch a human race other humans in the Olympics. We watch motorcycles race as well, with humans on them. Eventually we'll watch, it's just something about a human doing something is inherently interesting to us. And for the foreseeable future, that's not going anywhere. We're going to keep wanting to see humans do and make things.
What are you working on now? What are you doing right now?
So I'm continuing Liminal, the show. I'm also I just launched a new company called Xanatos AI, which is an AI media company in partnership with the other co-founder, Eddie Yoon. He's another pioneer in the space.
What is the focus of that?
So it's an AI media company. So we're going to be helping brands and doing AI filmmaking across the board. We're going to be creating the best ads and commercials for brands, consulting for people, where we're going to help them really figure out what to do to navigate the landscape. Because I already do a lot of consulting, but the demand is way higher than I can possibly meet. So we got to have more of a coalition of people that can help these brands understand where to do, how to navigate, how to win big moving into the future, and really to make great projects across the board. And so we're launching that. And we're also launching AI Creative Jobs, which is going to be really a hiring platform for projects, full-time and part-time jobs for AI creatives and brands to use so they can connect with each other. Because Eddie's getting hit up all the time of brands asking, how can I find an AI creative or an AI filmmaker to make something? And the filmmakers, what they're doing is so new that they don't even have connections directly for people looking specifically for AI work, even if they have traditional connections. So we want to create the platform that makes that as easy as possible for AI creatives and brands to find each other.
Can I ask you something, that maybe two bookends of the same question? So if you go back in time a few years, especially in the last couple, 3 years, do you remember when you were like sitting at your computer, sitting at your screen and looking at and working on something AI filmmaking, AI generated, and you kind of had this, oh, this is different. Like this, you almost could get chills and goosebumps. Do you remember a moment in time in the last few recent years?
I remember the exact moment. I'll never forget it. I had not even heard of Midjourney yet. It had just come out, and someone had just clipped together images made with Midjourney and put it on YouTube of like these beautiful fantasy or these 1980s cyberpunk images that were just images. And I couldn't believe how good they were so early. And I was just watching this and like my jaw was dropped. And I was calling and messaging everyone I knew. I was like, you guys don't understand what's happening. Like, look at this. And most people I told were like, yeah, that's really cool. People's minds were blown, but I don't think they got how crazy it was.
The gravity of it.
Exactly, because I'm a lifetime artist. So seeing this work being able to be created so quickly.
How long, Lion, how long ago was that?
It was 3 years ago. It was before there were any AI video generators at all. And before Midjourney was popular. Very few people knew about it. There was no AI short films really at the time. And there was only like a couple of videos on Midjourney. And when I saw one, I literally blew my mind. I was in the middle of the night and I went on a rabbit hole. I found every video that was out at the time, which wasn't a lot. You know, there were maybe dozens, you know, and I just kept paying attention to that, kept doing it. I got Midjourney immediately and I wanted to be one of the quickest people into it. And I just was excited about it. Because I was like, this is going to change everything. It's going to change concept art and VFX and animation and live action filmmaking. And that's just on the film side of things. But I realized this is not going to stop. This is just the beginning. And, you know, that moment, I knew what was coming in the future. It became obvious. It just was so much sooner than I expected something like that to exist. Because, you know, who would have thought that you could type in what you want and an image could come out the other end that looked amazing?
Natural language, you speak to it and it just does it. I had that kind of, I was very early when ChatGPT launched. One of my colleagues, you know, we talked about Gen AI and machine learning prior to that. And then when this launched, it was eerie how amazing it was to me. It was a similar moment. Can I ask you today, are you still getting that kind of aha moment?
Definitely. Literally a few days ago when Sora 2 dropped. When Sora 2 dropped, my head almost exploded because I had no idea that that's what they were working on, like a social media app. And it almost, you would think that like no one wants to watch that. But as soon as you go into it and you start scrolling and you start seeing how weird and unique and creative this stuff is, and you start realizing the possibilities and then you start making things with it, it's unbelievably addictive. Like I was sitting down, I think I have a pro account and I still got capped out at like 100 generations in one sitting because I just could not stop experimenting with it.
And there's going to be, that's why the word disruption is really applicable. It is disruptive. I do liken it to historical times of the agricultural and industrial revolution we spoke about earlier. I do think it's at that scale. I think the only thing that I'm seeing, to me, is those other large-scale changes of humanity. There was time to adapt and adopt. And I'm not sure humanity can adapt and adopt at the pace that this is moving. That's, to me, kind of a concern. What are your thoughts on the pace of change?
We definitely cannot adapt and adopt at the pace it's moving. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to have friction in the beginning until people have no choice but to adopt an adaptive sort of mindset where we expect it. This sort of happened with phones, where before, like my parents, they didn't have to change their technology too often. You had a record player for a long time, and then you had a cassette player for a long time. And then you had, you know, same thing. You had a a VHS player for a long time, and then you had a DVD player. But those windows kept getting shorter. VHS was a long time, DVD was shorter, Blu-ray was shorter, and then now you have streaming where you don't even have a device. So the amount is getting compressed now with AI to where it might get to weeks where you go over that amount of technology. Someone drops the equivalent of a VHS player, and the equivalent of a DVD player drops a week later, and the equivalent of a Blu-ray player drops a few days later. And we're just not designed to handle that. So I think we're going to have to integrate AI into our lives in a way that makes handling that not just easy and smooth, but fun for us. It makes it exciting where every day is different.
That's happening already. I feel it in my own behavior, my own experiences. Things are coming at me quite fast. I'm very curious like yourself. I try to digest and absorb, but it is quite difficult to stay at pace with what the changes and the disruption are. Just want to kind of wrap this up with you, but I am curious. You have an interesting trajectory over your career thus far, and I know you're in the middle of something super exciting at this point. I would say almost a strategic inflection point for you, or certainly a different chapter in your creative and innovative path. Is there a disruption of the past that shaped you as a creator and an innovator?
I think kind of a good way to think about it is like I was one of the people who lived in a time where disruption happened my whole life. And for millennials, we're kind of the first generation that's been the case. Where I was literally born, and then I had a TV that had like wood panels with knobs, and then I had VHS players and DVD and Blu-ray. I went through all of that stuff as a kid. I went from, Blockbuster to streaming, or to even to where we were getting DVDs mailed to you, to streaming.
Oh, right.
And
right.
so I was actually born in a time before rapid innovation and then lived into the time through rapid innovation, but right at the beginning. And millennials...
And now it's doing this.
Exactly. And now people after millennials are kind of in a position where they're just born on the track. And people before didn't have enough innovation through their lives to where it's necessarily comfortable. So it has to be like standout people like yourself who go out and really make it happen, where they're just like, I'm so curious, I'm looking for these things, but it's not intrinsic in the lifestyle of people born pre-millennial to adapt at a rapid pace, but it is intrinsic for people after millennials to adapt at a rapid pace.
Super interesting perspective, quite honestly. Can I ask you, earlier you mentioned, you want to stay ahead of the wave, you want to surf the wave, you don't want to get slammed by the wave. What are 3 things you personally do to stay ahead of technology disruption?
I play with everything that I come across. So anytime I hear about something cool, I'm like optimistic about it, and I go and I try it out and I see what it can do. That's one of the easiest things you can do. 2 is definitely follow people who are on the futurist side of things, even just 1 or 2, a couple, your favorite, and just see some of that stuff as it pops up in your feed and really pay attention to it so you can get an idea of where things are going. So the disruption is positive disruption for your life, not negative disruption for your life. And then the third thing you can do is figure out what, if you had to imagine 100 years into the future, which is very hard to do, what kind of things just can't possibly be the case 100 years in the future? If we think about it, like 100 years in the future, are we going to have all the jobs we have now? Definitely not. 100 years in the future, is AI going to be everywhere? Of course. Are robots going to be everywhere? Of course. If you think about it in such a long time horizon, it makes it much easier, not necessarily to predict what's going to happen, but to at least predict what's not going to be the case. And that's going to make it much easier to figure out where you should sort of which baskets you should put your eggs in. Like, okay, this is not going to be a thing. Let me not do that. Is college as it is going to exist 100 years from now? No, right? If you could imagine people having access to their brain, just, to any information in real time, we don't have to go somewhere to learn something. That would be antiquated. So will we have something different where people commune together to work on things? Of course. So just think in that way. What's not going to exist 100 years from now? And don't bet heavy into those things.
It's interesting. One of the things I was going to ask you, and I think you just told me the answer. What's one thing you could tell someone if they feel overwhelmed by the pace of change and the disruption that's happening? And I think that that time horizon that you're talking about is, think about a 100-year lifespan, 100 years from now, what does that look like? To me, that almost gives me comfort that, you know, whether we're here or not, you kind of think about it in that time horizon, you start to go, oh, okay, I can better prepare. And to be quite honest with you, Lion, one of the reasons why I want to have you on the show, one of the reasons why we launched this show is I want to make sense of the chaos, because I feel like there's a couple camps out there. And I think you just described it in an extreme form. You have a lot of the thought leaders talking about AI. You have people like you who are like prone to like just be an adopter and interest and curious. But you have people who are, quite honestly, completely outside of that. And on those far extremes, you have probably likely 80% of the population somewhere between someone who has no interest, no curiosity, and those that are already deeply entrenched in this new transformation of humanity. But I think 80% of the population is somewhere in the middle. And my goal is to talk about things that have been disrupted in the past, try to make sense of our history so we can make sense of our current and prepare for the tomorrow. I did mention earlier, there's disruptors, people are being disrupted, or observers. And I think that is really my goal of this show. And people like you that have like kind of boots on the ground, deep in the trenches, figuring out, working in the tools, I think just brings great clarity and curiosity to the space in general.
I'm glad you feel that way. I mean, I feel the same way. I think what you're doing is perfect. I think helping especially those 80% of people who are most people in the middle is where you're going to do the most good. Those are the people we really should be trying to teach to surf. And it's fun, right? I think framing has a lot to do with it. Anxiety and excitement, I'm sure you've heard this, both activate the same physiological response in the body.
Right.
So I just, instead of being anxious about something, you could just label it as excitement, and now it's a good thing. And now you're exploring and having fun. And honestly, things are so much better than they were in the past.
I reached out to you because your work, your filmmaking, your AI, your interest and curiosity in leveraging the AI tools, but I also love the philosophy that you have and kind of how you lead your own life journey. So I thank you for sharing some of that today too. I always like to give people some chance to talk about what you want people to look at and learn and listen. I know we talked about Film Crux. You got a new business partner now. What do you want to plug?
So people can find me at Lion El Aton everywhere. Honestly, just for their own sake, definitely go get Sora, the Sora app, and try Sora too. Just because it's fun. I'm on there and you can experiment. It's a really great way to see where things are going and what people are doing. But I think the main thing for people to do is just look for whoever you're interested in and follow them. It doesn't have to be me. It can be my business partner, Eddie Yoon. He's great. Anyone who's really looking at these things in the future, watching podcasts like this, that's going to do the most good for you, you know? And we have also a thing called the AI Creative Club, Eddie Yoon and I run. And the AI Creative Club, it's on School. It's a community. It's sort of a private community where we're getting the best AI creatives in the world all into one place. So if you're AI creative or you want to be, that's a great place to meet other people, network, a great way to collaborate, get hired, showcase your work. We do AMAs with the best filmmakers there and the best AI creators. And we have a bunch of other stuff we want to do there that is really a community for people who are just looking into this kind of thing. It's it's only optimists, basically. So if you want to do that, that's a great place to go as well.
Lion, thank you so much for the time. You're very giving. You're very thoughtful. You've got I love the Renaissance man in training, Renaissance man in the making. I think that totally fits you. You're certainly a futurist. I think you lean into AI filmmaking. Your creative spirit is infectious. This has been a great conversation. Really appreciate the time today.
Oh, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll be talking, I'm sure. All right. Thank you.